now this is going to be a help video in terms of how to make a bar graph in Excel that has two different categories and error bars. So in my made up data set here, we have fertilizer. So either plants that have gotten fertilizer or that didn't get fertilizer. And then we have water. Then we have plants that were exposed to drought or non-drought. So what we want to have is we want to come up with a bar graph that shows the average biomass for each combination here. So one of the things in Excel is that if we do make a bar graph, we do need to calculate the averages first ourselves. So in this case, I would want to calculate the average biomass for all fertilized and all drought plants. So what I can do is I can equals average. I'm going to show you a different way to do this in a second. Here we go. That will be our average, right? You want to set up our graph, you want to come up with a little, there's different ways to do that, but I just find this one the easiest. So I'm going to write here fertilizer, and then what did I name it here? No fertilizer. And then we have drought and watered. And now in here, and this is going to be our averages, doesn't matter, averages. So now if you want to copy and paste this value into this square here, you go to copy, but then you have to be very careful because this was a formula. You can't just copy and paste, otherwise it's going to mess it up. What you want to do is you're going to go to edit, paste special, and then paste just the values. So now it's just going to post the value. Another way that you can do this, you can set up that square here first, and then you can calculate the averages directly in here. So here I want the non-fertilizer drought average. So let me see here. So I have non-fertilizer drought. So these will be those values. Enter. See, something went wrong. Oh, it's not averages, it's just average. There we go. Yes, hang on. Okay, enter. So that seems to make sense. Then we want to have the average here for my fertilized and watered. So fertilized and watered. So it doesn't matter how you have organized the data over here on your left side. What you do need to do though is you need to come up with this little square that gives you the averages for all of the values that you want to depict in this bar graph. And then the last one here is going to be our no fertilizer watered. Again, so you could have this in different columns here if that's the way you had it set up. But this is usually how we would set it up in a regular data set. So now we have this little square, and you can kind of double check if that makes sense. So from these numbers here, 34, 45, 43.9 seems to make sense. Then fertilized water, those numbers seems to be fairly high if you look at those numbers. So that seems to make sense too. And then you can go through all of those. It's always a good idea in Excel to double check your equations because it's so quick that something can go wrong. And now you simply want to select all of those values, go to insert, chart, there's different ways. I'm just going to go to column. So this is another one that is really weird in Excel. So this is actually in Excel, this isn't called the bar chart, but it's called a column. And you want to make sure, so you want to, I could also have gone here, insert, and then charts, and then you want to go to the 2D column here, right? So that makes the same thing. So now you can see you have now, and then for all scientific stuff, you want to get rid of the chart title. We don't have titles in our charts in scientific writing. You also see the y-axis labels are missing, so you need to fix this, but that's not going to be the point of this video. But now you see here you have our drought and our watered biomass, and then it's split up by fertilizer and no fertilizer. So now we have a bar graph with those 4 different columns. Okay, However, because those are averages, we also want to calculate the standard error of mean for our error bars. So this needs a little bit of work here in Excel. So what you want to do is you want to first calculate your standard deviation. And you want to set this up the same way as you had set up this square for your averages. So you're going to set it up the exact same way, otherwise Excel is going to get very confused. And now we do the same thing as we did, but instead of calculating averages, you calculate standard deviation. Yep. And then so now you select the numbers for fertilizer and drought. Remember, the standard deviation is a measure of how much variability is in the data that you used to calculate your average. And then we want to repeat this. Standard. There we go. For no fertilizer and drought, so these were these numbers, no fertilizer and drought. Then we want to have standard deviation for our watered and fertilized. And then we want to have the last one here. This is going to be now no fertilizer and watered. Those would be those data points here. Okay. So one of the things I want you to look at, you can see that those numbers are dramatically different. So the watered and fertilizer number is really large. So if we now look at our watered and fertilizer, and I specifically set it up this way, so what you can see is in this combination, the numbers of biomass are all over the place, right? So 23 versus 143 versus 234. So this means there's a lot of variability. It seems very random, right? So those numbers are very far apart to calculate the average. So that means it makes sense that this number here is quite large. On the other hand, if you look at the no fertilizer drought number, this is a very small number. And so if you go to no fertilizer drought, you can see that all of those numbers here are fairly close together. So that means all of those biomass measurements here are very similar. So there is much less variation, which also means your average is much more accurate because there's just much less variability. So just to give you a sense of what standard deviation actually means. And then the last thing we need to do, remember I said your error bars need to be the standard error of mean, which we often shorten as SEM. And that you need to calculate again here in Excel. And what you need to do is you need to set it up again the same way, drought watered, okay? And now the formula is it's your standard deviation divided by the square root of how many data points did you use to calculate your average. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's wrong. So I want to have it at the square root of 10. Okay. And then this one equals your standard deviation, and we know in this case they were all 10 numbers, so it can just be divided by 10, and that equals this number divided by the square root of 10, and then this equals this number divided by the square root of 10. Okay. So again, this is now just all a little bit smaller. It's just smaller because we divided it by the number of samples in that sample. But those are our standard error of means. Okay. So now when we have calculated those, we need to add them as error bars. Now if you want to do is you want to click off one of your graph on your bars here. So let's start with the blue bars. So now you can see if I click on the blue bar, it selects both of those blue bars, and it also highlights that it's those values that it's taking to calculate our blue bars. So now what you want to do is you want to find your add chart element. This might look a little bit different in different versions of Excel. If you go here, you find the option error bars. And in Excel, it's very unfair. It says here standard error, but that is wrong. You need to go to more error bars options. And then you come up with a formatting tool that says format error bars. Sometimes you see those three options here. Sometimes it comes up with the wrong thing here. You need to go to the one that shows those little bars. Direction, you want to have both. End style, you want to have a cap. And then the error amount, again, you cannot select any of those, but you need to go to custom. And now, because we only selected our fertilized values, you want to specify value. And now you want to specify those standard error of means that you have calculated by selecting those two cells. Then you want to delete whatever was in here in the negative error value and again select the same two cells. So positive is just the amount of the error bar that is showing the average plus the error, and then the minus is what shows the average minus the error. And so now if you press OK, you can see that it added error bars to our fertilized values. Why it doesn't show this here as a total thing, that I have no idea. There we go. Okay. So what you can see here is our fertilizer drought is a much smaller error bar than our fertilized watered. And if you look at this now, you can see that the error bar here for drought and fertilizer is much smaller than the one for fertilized and water. So again, you kind of want to compare if those error bars make sense. Now we just need to repeat this for the orange bars. So we select the orange bars, which are our non-fertilized bars. And now we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to go to chart design, add chart element, error bars, more error bar options. And then we want to go to custom, specify value, and now it's the no fertilizer one. Okay, so we select those two cells, we select the same two cells for the negative values, we're going to go to OK. And now my Excel today has a little bit of a hiccup. If we move this, and then you see that this looks correct. This error bar is tiny, that is corresponding with this small value, whereas with this small value, whereas the watered non-fertilizer is bigger. So now what you can see is the entirely finished graph, except that we need to have some proper y-axis labels here. But that's how you would do in Excel a bar graph with two different categories and added error bars.